Right. I think I have in the bulletin something this line, which I think I have here first. When things get heavy. Now things have been heavy around the Atwood house the last couple of weeks. And things get heavy for all of us sometime or another. Relationships, money, health, grief. Things get heavy. When they do, I just thought of this. When they do turn, try church. You know, a lot of people think that heavy people stay away from church. You need it more than ever. You didn't hear and worship God and other people that care about you. We need to stay in church. And as Sandy said, just show up every week and see what God's doing. But just be there. All right, and then try thankfulness. Even when things get heavy, when things aren't going, try to be thankful. There are things to be thankful about. Don't forget being grateful for the good things you have, or all you do is mope about how bad you got it. And try beauty. I love this time of year when all the crepe myrtles around here. I told Sandy until I'm getting old how much I like flowers. And beauty, that God, we know God is a God of beauty because of all the beauty He made. And get out in the woods and get out in and see the beauty when things get heavy. And music. And I've been heavy dosing on Christian music lately and bluegrass, and just, you know, because it's got some good message there for us. We need that. We have a, and that's where I heard this song, Ain't No Grave. We got to get in some good Christian music to help lift you up, no matter what you're going through. And humor, which is why I want to do this. Funny thing, that humor can help us even health-wise. I've known people, read about people, I know them, who really, when they got into laughing and finding good, clean humor, it helped them health-wise. And so I think we just need to remember all these things, because there's a tendency or a temptation when things get heavy to just do this. And I know we're all there, and I've been doing some of that. But we can't just stay there, is what I'm saying. So I put us a little things I got off Facebook, just to maybe, all right, as I watched the dog chasing his tail, I thought dogs are easily amused. Then I realized I was watching the dog chase his tail. Or, who says teaching is stressful? I'm 39 and I feel great. Right, Allison and Dan? Yeah. All right. A friend suggested horse manure on my strawberries. I'm not doing that again. I'm going back to whipped cream. She said, "Bye, that looks like a very interesting book. Do you mind? I'm trying to read." And he's reading How to Attract Women. Victor's not what you would call a quick study. Have you been a good kitty today, Muffy? Yes, you have been a good kitty, haven't you? Did you see how she talks to that cat? She thinks cat actually knows what she's saying, he says to the dog. You know. So we all got our sorry, I haven't got anything done today. I've been in the produce department trying to open the stupid plastic bag. Remember, when you bury a body, cover it with endangered plants so it's illegal to dig up. Follow me for more gardening tips. Finally, the kids are asleep. Chores are done. From now till bedtime, I can do whatever I want. Moments later. Finally, when you get a little, if you had kids, you know that. Finally, when you get a little me time, you're so tired you go to sleep. Your childhood injuries: fell off my bike, fell out of a tree, twisted my ankle. Adult injuries: slept wrong, sat down too long, sneezed too hard. Much truth there. We have to stop saying, "How stupid can you be?" Too many people are seeing it as a challenge. This is, "Mom, where are you?" She texts. "Leaving Walmart, halfway home. Why, sweetie? You brought me to Walmart with you." Uh-oh, be back in a bit. Things too true. All right, last one. Please note, the post-apocalyptic fiction section has been moved to current affairs. That's a comment on our times. All right, so today, as I was thinking about what's going on in our life, I thought of this. Be kind. That's the title of the message I want to present. Be kind. It helps. I remember when Sandy was in the hospital last week as the nurses and doctors came in, and most of them were trying to be smiling and kind. When my mother died, was dying in Ball Hospital in Muncie, Indiana, how that when the nurses would come in, my mother would brighten up because they were so nice to her and trying to make her feel good, and they were so kind. When my mother lay there hurting, she needed somebody who was kind and helpful and helping her. And that reminded me that, you know, again, when we're heavy, we need people like that. I was reminded when Sandy and I had our second son, who was 10 weeks early. He was in the neonatal intensive care for 2 weeks, 4 weeks in the hospital, how nice and kind the nurses were, dealing with the stress of having children, life and death situation that some of those babies did die. And yet to us they were so kind. And it helped. It made a difference. And Sandy and I were thinking we have what we call a Wednesday night prayer meeting together every week. And our first Wednesday night prayer meeting after last Friday's meeting with the oncologist. And the first, we always have praise items first, and then we have prayer requests. And Sandy said, what are we praising the Lord for? Usually comes a little quicker, but with that diagnosis. And so we said, well, you know what we are? One thing is how many people care about us. Because all kind of people said we care. We call that we're praying for you. We're sorry to hear this. And all three of my sons brought food over and they showed they care. People called us and we care. And how hard would it be to go through something like this and nobody cared? I'm telling you, it makes a difference just to know that somebody cares. Be kind. It helps. So let's look at a few Bible verses about this. Get rid of all bitterness. Wow, there's a message for just that. We could take that phrase and take a message. Get rid of all bitterness. We don't have long enough life to be wasting time holding on to bitterness. Wasting your heart holding on to bitterness. Has somebody mistreated you? Probably. And you holding on to that bitterness is just hurting yourself. You're not hurting them. Get rid of bitterness. And rage. Again, that can be an anger. It can be because somebody did wrong to us and now we take it out on other people. But get rid of that. You're not helping anybody, especially yourself. Harsh words. Why are we always talking so harsh to each other? What in the world, when you realize how short this life is, are we wasting our breath hurting with our words? In our marriages and our relationships. Get rid of those. Get rid of slander. You know how we can sort of talk about people without lying and then make it look wrong. Get rid of that and all types of evil behavior. Instead of that kind of behavior, be kind to each other. Be kind to each other. Tender-hearted. You know, having a place where your heart's not hard but tender towards other people's needs. Forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. What a great passage there, Ephesians chapter 4. Let's read another one. Since God chose you to be the holy people He loves, and we'll talk about that phrase another time, you must clothe yourself. You must put on these things. Tender-hearted mercy. Kindness. And when you're kind, don't do it in an arrogant way. But humility, gentleness, and patience. You know how you can do a good deed for somebody and do it impatiently and arrogantly? Here you go. You should have known better. No, kindness with patience and humility and tenderhearted. All right, here's another one in that great love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient and kind. Love is patient and kind. And if you're not doing that, it ain't love. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Nothing wrong with that. But let's not stay saying it. Let us show it, the truth, by our actions. And then just one more. One of my favorite verses that I've preached many times on is Galatians 6:9, where it says, don't be weary in well-doing, which we do. We get weary in doing good. And instead, know that you're going to reap. But then he says right after that, verse 10, therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, when should we do good? Whenever we have the opportunity, do good to everyone, especially to them in the family of faith. Now that doesn't mean that you don't do good to everyone, but start where you are, which is why I like this quote which explains this verse in Galatians 6. You can't change the world by stepping over the people closest to you. Start there. You want to know start where kindness? Start to your husband. Start with your wife. Start with your children. Start with your parents. Start with your church family, your neighbors, your friends. Start right there, being kind and patient and humble and tender-hearted. Start right there is where we should do, being kind. So, what I want to do today is I want to tell some stories. Now, here's what happened. I was cleaning out a filing cabinet. I looked through a bunch of my old stories. So some of these are old stories. Yeah, you know why I cleaned out the filing cabinet. Gave it to you. But I said I'm going to digitize these, and I got rid of a lot of them. So a lot of these are my old stories, all right? But I found one that was only 2 years old I want to start with as an example of not kindness. This is a true story about Deborah Stevens. I think we have a picture of her here in Fort Smith, Arkansas. She delivered newspapers early in the morning every day. This happened 2 years ago, August of 2019. But there was a lot of rain, and as she finished delivering the newspaper, she drove trying to get home where she shouldn't have driven, where the road was becoming flooded. Her car stalled out. She's in the middle, the water is rising. She's by herself. It's still dark, like 4 or 5 in the morning, and she calls 911. I won't give you all of the words, but the 911 operator was on her last shift. She had resigned. This was her last time, and maybe that has something to do with it. But when Deborah talked to her, she said, I have an emergency, a severe emergency. I can't get out. The water's rising. I'm scared to death, ma'am. Can you please help me? And she said, I'm going to die. And the woman says, you're not going to die. I don't know why you're freaking out. You freaking out is doing nothing but losing your oxygen, so calm down. And then Stevens could be heard crying on the phone. She says, I'm scared. I've never had anything like this happen to me before. And the operator says, well, that'll teach you next time. Don't drive in the water. And Deborah says, I couldn't see it, ma'am. I'm sorry. I wouldn't have. And the operator says, I don't know how you didn't see it. You had to go right over it, so. The sad thing is, even though the EMTs got there, they didn't get there in time, and Deborah Stevens died. She drowned in her car, and the last person she talked to was this 911 operator who basically bawled her out as she sat there dying. It seems unkind to lecture somebody in the middle of a crisis. Now, should she have driven in that water? No. And all of us know that right here. Don't folks? The water comes, don't drive in there, all right? I'll say that now. But if you're already in the middle of the crisis, that's not the time to lecture people, although we're tempted. Right? It's not the time. We don't want to hear a lecture when we're in the middle of a crisis, when we're hurting. And I thought it was unkind that she had no empathy. She didn't make this woman, I'm scared to death. She didn't have no empathy with her fear, and it was unkind that if she did give advice, and if it was good advice, I guess, saving her oxygen, she didn't give it humbly. She gave it arrogantly and harshly. And we can do that. We can give good advice in a mean attitude. So all of those things were unkind. I'm not blaming her. She did get the EMTs there. She did that part of her job. But she did it in a very unkind way to a woman who was in the last moments of her life. And I'm saying we all are tempted so much in this truth area. I am. I'm a truth person. That we're tempted to show no grace in the middle of it. So I got 10 stories, and some of these are good ones. Well, they're all good ones, of kindness. First one I call choosing, he called it Choosing Mary. Now, a guy named Dan Taylor wrote a book called Letters to My Children, and this is out of that book. He wrote it in '89, and this is to his son Matthew. And I'm going to read this because the way he wrote it is good. He said, Dear Matthew, when I was in the 6th grade, I was an All-American. I was smart, athletic, witty, handsome, and incredibly nice. Well, he's saying it a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Things went downhill fast in junior high, but for this 1 year at least, I had everything. And that's the way it was in my school. The 6th grade was the top year. When I was the top dog, when I was a 6th, that's when I won my twist contest, when I was in 6th grade. But he goes on to say, unfortunately, I also had Miss Owens for an assistant teacher. She helped out Mr. Jenkins. She knew that even though I was smart and incredibly nice, there was still a thing or two I could work on. One of the things you expected to do in grade school was to learn to dance. My parents may have had some reservations for us, but since this was square dancing, it was okay. Every time we went to work on our dancing, we did this terrible thing. I agree, I don't like this. The boys would all line up at the door, then one at a time, each boy would pick a girl to be his partner. The girls all sat at their desks. As they were chosen, they would leave their desk and join the snot-nosed kids who had honored them with their favor. Believe me, the boys did not like doing this, at least I didn't. But think about being one of those girls. Think about waiting to get picked. Think about seeing who's going to get picked before you. Think about worrying you'd get picked by someone you couldn't stand. Think about worrying whether you'd get picked at all. Think if you were Mary. Mary sat near the front of the classroom on the right side. She wasn't pretty. She wasn't real smart. She wasn't witty. She was nice, but that wasn't enough in those days. And Mary certainly wasn't athletic. She had had polio when she was younger. One of her arms was drawn up, and she had a bad leg. And to finish it off, she was kind of fat. Wow. Poor Mary. Think about her, he said. So, here's where Miss Owens come in. Miss Owens took me aside and said, Dan, the next time we have square dancing, I want you to choose Mary. She may as well have told me to fly to Mars. It was an idea so new and inconceivable I can barely hold it in my head. You mean pick somebody other than the best, the prettiest, the most popular in my time? That seemed like breaking a law of nature. And then Miss Owens did a really rotten thing. She told me it was the Christian thing to do. I knew immediately I was doomed. I was doomed because I knew she was right. It was. Choosing Mary, I agonized, would go against all the coolness I had accumulated. The day came when we went to the square dance again. If God really loved me, I thought he'll make me last. Then picking Mary will cause no stir. I will have done the right thing and it won't cost me anything. You can guess where I was instead. For whatever reason, they made me first in line. There I was, my heart pounding. Now I knew how some of the girls must have felt. The faces of the girls were turned toward me, some smiling. I looked at Mary. She was half turned, staring at the desk. Okay, Dan, choose your partner. I remember feeling very far away. I heard my voice say, I choose Mary. Never had reluctant virtue been so rewarded. I still see her face undimmed in my memory. She lifted her head, and on her face, written with pleasure and surprise and embarrassment at the same time, was the most genuine look of delight and even pride that I'd ever seen before or since. It was so pure that I had to look away because I knew I didn't deserve it. Mary came and took my arm as we'd been instructed, and she walked beside me, bad leg and all, just like a princess. I never saw Mary after that year. I don't know what her life's been or what she's doing, but I'd like to think she has a fond memory of at least one day in 6th grade. I know I do. Wow. Wow. And so I say kindness can be just as simple as including others. What does all kind of people feel like they don't measure up some way or another? And all we have to do is include them in too. It's not going to ruin your coolness. You'll be more cool if you include others. All right, here's another one, and I got a picture. I looked for a picture of somebody smiling to do this, and here was a Chick-fil-A worker, of course. They came up, and back in 2020, when they may still be wearing masks, I don't know. Some of the Chick-fil-A workers, worried that people wouldn't see their smile, took a picture of themselves with a smile and hung it on so everybody could see them smiling. I like that. And then, by the way, she looks like she's smiling. I can tell she's smiling. Can you see her now? She had this the way her eyes are. Well, here's my point. This is a true story also, a teenager named Stephen, Christian, and he told his parents, I don't want to ride a bus, I want to get to school early. And he didn't tell them why, but I got to be there at 7:15. And so they made sure he got to school every morning at 7:15. Unfortunately, later on, in his high school years, in the wintertime, he was in a car crash and died. As they got ready for the funeral, the parents found out why he wanted to be at school early. He and some of his friends, his other Christian friends, wanted to welcome people to school. And so they got there early, that when everybody came, they could give them a smile and greet them and give them a wave, especially people who didn't have friends. Because he was a Christian, he wanted to bring joy in their life. I thought, wow. I'm sad that he had to go, but what a testimony he left there. And so I say, kindness can be a smile and a warm welcome. To just say, hey, I'm glad you're here. And smile at people. When your wife or husband comes home from work, you're a little bit late. Did you get the thing at the grocery store I told you to pick up? Or do you start with a smile and a kiss? I'm glad you're here. Start with that. Start with that. And wherever you go, at church, a smile and a warm welcome can be kindness. But then I got a picture of our Truth and Grace Community Pantry logo, and because that's another way of kindness. The pantry, I asked Charles last year, even though they only stopped 1 week in the pandemic, 2020, and that's because they had to be in quarantine, some of the workers. Provided household for food for 1,877 households. If the average household is 4 people, that's over 7,000 people, 7,000 who were fed last year in the middle of the pandemic. And so far this year, 1,143 households have been helped so far, and it's August. And so some of you, of course, are in that work, and I appreciate that ministry. Charles said he's got to witness and talk to 4 Muslims recently about Jesus. And not only do they give out the food here every Thursday, but they give out food and send food to different ministries like halfway houses and people where they're trying to get sober and things like this. A conduit to helping all kinds of people. And Charles has been mentoring another food pantry as they get started. So kindness can be involved in a ministry of kindness like this, like the pantry or others that there are. But we appreciate all you workers for the pantry ministry. And there's a thing like Operation Christmas Child. I think this is one of the best things going on in the world today. It is so many hundreds of thousands and millions of people are affected by Operation, and you're a part of that because every year we do that. Sandy starts when the one ends in November, she starts on the next year. We have bins and boxes in our storage room and our garage filled with stuff for Operation Shoebox coming up. She has a very interesting story. Come up here to the microphone so they can see you and hear you. Tell about this true story.
You know, you wouldn't believe this story unless you know the person that told it. My boss, Ron Hunter, went to Mexico to help pass out shoeboxes. Frequently, anybody can go and pass them out all over the world. And he went to Mexico, and he said he was passing out shoeboxes, and there was an older girl. She looked like maybe she was in 6th or 7th grade, so he was looking for a box for the 10 to 14-year-olds. You know, that's the least group that we said there's not as many boxes for. So he finally found a box for her, and he took it to her and gave it to her. He went on passing out other things, and he came back by, and he noticed that she was crying. And he said, "Is something wrong? Was there something wrong with your box?" And she said, "No." She said, "My family goes to Coleman, Alabama every year to pick tomatoes." And she said, "When we started school last year, there was a girl in my class, and she was so nice to me. She would ask me to sit with her, and she was so kind to me. And this box has her picture and a letter from her in it."
Wow.
That this, out of all those millions of boxes, there's 10 million boxes that go out a year. She got that one box from that girl in Coleman, Alabama. And I think God is orchestrating all of this It's just a miracle. It is actually a miracle.
That's right.
And that happens over and over. I wish you could hear some of the stories that I watch and I hear of kids who get a box and it changed their life. One boy said, I got a box and it made me decide that I wanted to be a pastor and do what they were doing and passing out these boxes. And so it changes the lives of people. And so we have this incredible opportunity to give to others and be kind.
As you there have opportunity, take advantage of it to do good. Let's do that. I know you'll want to help out in Operation Christmas Child. I have a picture I just got this off the internet of somebody putting a hand on the shoulder, because as I'm going through my notes, I got an email that I printed out from 2001. Now, I left Delaware as a pastor there in 2000, so this was a year later. And it said this: Dear Pastor Atwood, so many times I have sat in front of my computer wanting to write to you, but not having the words, just as I used to stand at the door of the church wanting to talk to you, and could not keep my emotions down long enough to tell you what I needed to tell you. It's been almost 6 years since I have been saved, and I don't want to go over that story now, but I will tell you is that when God led me on a Wednesday night service where you were preaching, I felt the need to tell of my experience with the God I had just met. My heart was full, and I felt the need to tell everyone of the mercy of God. I had never done this, and I didn't know what to say. You sat down behind me, and I felt a slight hand on my shoulder, just enough to let me know I was not alone. Although that was not much to you, to me it was what I needed to have the courage to confess what God had done for me. I love the Lord with all my heart, and I'm proud to stand for Him and tell His love. The other thing you did for me was give me a challenge to stretch. That is a seed you placed in my heart. With this challenge I've witnessed and won. I am now teaching a class on Wednesday night and love it. But most of all, I want to tell you today, I led someone to Christ. You see, Pastor, that day when you placed a slight hand of encouragement on my shoulder, it was something big. You gave me the power to stand, and I thank you. Now, here's the interesting thing. I don't even remember that. I don't remember placing a hand on her shoulder. But I knew she was struggling. What am I saying? I'm saying sometimes kindness can be just a touch. Now, it's not a Governor Cuomo kind of touch. We understand that. We do want to be tactful. But human beings, God has made us so that touch makes a difference. It makes a difference not just mentally and emotionally, even physically. It makes a difference. And the right kind of touch, whether it may be a handshake, it may be placing your hand over their hand, it may be behind the elbow, or a hand on the shoulder, like when mine was burned at the funeral for my mother, and I remember the hand on my shoulder. Never said a word, I remember the hand on my shoulder. It could be a hug, depends on who you know who it is, or a side hug if you don't want. But I'm saying your kindness can be even just a touch. To let, as she said, to let me know I wasn't alone. We need to know we're not alone in all this stuff. So kindness can be a touch. I like this true story, and it's supposed to be true according to Tom Payton. So if it ain't wrong, he made it up. But it's a story, it tells about a young woman who had a break. She wanted to have some cookies and coffee, so she went to the cookie shop. She bought the coffee, put the bag in her purse, bag of cookies. Then she went to the coffee shop, which was filled up except for one table, and there was a man sitting at it reading a paper. She sat on the opposite side of the man reading the paper, and she started reading her magazine, drinking her coffee, and then she reached for a cookie. And just as she reached for a cookie, she noticed the man reaching, and he took a cookie out. She glared at him, and he just smiled as he ate the cookie. She ate her cookie, a little aggravated, and then she reached for another cookie, and he reached for another cookie. Then she, glad there was one cookie left, and she just looked at the cookie like, I dare you to get it. The man reached it, broke it in half, and smiled, and gave her half the cookie, and got up and left. Well, she was so aggravated. My coffee break is ruined now. She put the magazine back in her purse, and then she saw her bag of cookies. It was his bag of cookies she'd been taking out of. But he smiled, he shared with a smile. And so kindness can be sharing. You got some cookies, share them, okay? You got a Dr. Pepper, pour us some. Kindness can be sharing, not holding it. We try to teach this to children, let's remember it ourselves. Kindness can be sharing. I really like this true story about a circus. I didn't even know they still had circuses. I got this picture on the internet, but it's a true story told by a guy named Dan Clark. Now, Dan is about the age of my age. He is a motivational speaker and has written books for the Chicken Soup for the Soul. The kind you've probably heard of those. So Dan Clark tells this story of when he was a teenager. His dad and he were going to a circus. And they're waiting in line to pay to get into the circus. And in front of them is a family, the mom and the dad and 8 children, all under 12. And he sees the children and they're lined up in groups of 2 holding hands with each other. And they're all smiles and excited about it. And he said you could tell from the way they're dressed we didn't have much money. And the dad's looking at her like, I'm taking my family to the circus, you know. And the mom's looking at him, oh, you're so wonderful for taking us to it. He says they just sell the love and excitement and the pride as they're getting ready to go to the circus. And they got up there and he said, I want 8 children's tickets and 2 adults for my family to see the circus. And she told how much it was. And the wife dropped her hand out of her husband, and the husband looked down and his lips started to quiver. And he said, how much? And he said the price again. And you could tell he didn't have that much money. And he was going to have to not take his family to the circus when they were so excited. He said it was that time that my dad reached in and pulled the $20 out that we were going to buy. And he dropped it on the ground and said, excuse me, sir, you dropped some of your money. And he placed it in the man's hand. And he said the man looked at him and he knew what he was doing. He hadn't begged for that, but he saw what the man was doing. And he said, thank you, sir. The tear in his eye, thank you. This means so much to my family. And they paid and they got in the circus. And Dan says, my father and I left and we went back to the car because we'd given our circus money to the family. But I didn't do without. So which do you think he would have remembered most? Circus? Missing circus, but helping somebody else to go. That made an impact on his life. So kindness is giving. Sometimes even if you have to miss the circus, so somebody else can go. Kindness. And sometimes we have more than we need. Let's give somebody. There's people in need, let's give. People we can help, let's give. That can be kindness. And then this guy, the guy who wrote Faith of Our Fathers a couple of 100 years ago, I think, maybe in the 1800s, said, kindness has converted more sinners than zeal, eloquence, or learning. Now, not that those are bad. I'm not saying he's right, but he's trying to say kindness is important in reaching other people for Jesus, which is why I want to tell this story. It was in Titusville, Florida. It was a meeting of pastors and Christian leaders, and the guy who is teaching this tells about how that when he finished talking to the 1,000 pastors and leaders in a Friday night service at a church, he had them all go around. He did rejoice with them, rejoice, and weep with those who weep. And he said, I want you to get in small groups and comfort each other. Just tell about a hard time you're going through now or had, and give Bible verses and words you would say to encourage people and pray with each other. And so now you have 1,000 people in groups of 4 or 5 crying and praying and talking and smiling. And a guy, he goes to the front of the door because he's done for the evening. And he's standing there watching when a guy comes in the door. And the guy said, what's going on? He said, I'm just out for a walk. I wonder what in the world 1,000 people on there on Friday night. He said, what are they doing? And he told them they were giving comfort to other people who needed comfort. He said, that's what I need. And so he proceeded to tell how that he had just put his mother in a nursing home. He was getting ready to lose his job at Kennedy Space Center because of layoffs. And that day his fiancée had broken up with him. He said, if anybody needs comfort, I do. And so he got a group of people who said, hey, wait a minute. And they got over there and they started talking to him, praying with him, comforting him. And before the evening, he was a Christian. He turned his life to Christ because of kindness. And so I say that kindness is important in leading people to Jesus. And I think we want to do that. We want people to go to heaven with us. We want them to be able to turn their lives to forgiveness in Jesus. Kindness is an important part of that. And go around sowing seeds of kindness. I got two more and I'll quit. Here's a picture of a little boy with one arm. Marion Ash tells this story. When he was younger, he was working with an older guy painting a farmhouse. They just got down, climbed down the ladders, got some cold drink of water on a hot summer day, and we're getting ready to go back up, and here come a boy with one arm riding a bicycle. And he says, Mom told me to ask you if you need any water. I would go down and I would come back and bring you some cold water. And Marion Ash says, I was just getting ready to tell him we just had a drink when the older guy said, hey, thank you, Sonny. On a hot day like this, we sure could use a drink of cold water. And he said, I bet you're glad. The boy said, I bet you're glad I came, didn't he? He said, yes, now we got another man on the job. And he rode back. And Marion Ash said later, I saw what he did within a few words. He gave that young man who was handicapped confidence that he could help and do something. And so kindness can be words building confidence and hope. Your words are so powerful. Did you know that? Did you know it? How powerful your words are? And Jerry says, are you looking at me? But they are. I say that because I say it to all of us. Your words are so powerful for ill or good. As far as I know, Jerry's only giving good words. So I don't think I know. But let's give words of kindness and hope and confidence to people with the words we give. This is my last one. This man's name is Stephen Covey. He wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I read this about 25 years ago, and it was a good book. But he told a story about it. One day he was riding the subway in New York City. He said it was quiet on a Sunday morning. People were rushing off to work. They were reading the paper. Some of them were laying there like they were sleeping. And he said then it stopped. A man got on with a couple of children. And the man sat down beside me, and he just laid his head back like he was going to sleep. And the kids were wild. He said they were running around. They were yelling. One of them even grabbed the adult's newspaper. And Stephen Covey said, I took it about as long as I thought I was, being patient. I said, sir, I don't know if you see, but your children are causing a little upset here. Do you think maybe you could do something to calm them down? And he said it was then that the man sort of came to, and he said, oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I wasn't paying attention. You see, their mother just died an hour ago, and I'm sure they don't know what to do, and I don't know what to do either. Stephen Covey says, when I learned that, everything changed. I wasn't mad anymore. It changed my feelings. It changed what I said. It changed my behavior. I said, oh, sir, I'm so sorry. What can I do to help? Because he understood now what they were going through. And so I'll say to you, kindness can be trying to understand what people are going through. Right? Because so many people are going through stuff and we don't realize it. I'm not excusing every behavior with that. But I'm saying we need to try to understand what people are going through and help them. And when we do understand, it changes just the way we act. And God understands. It says in the book of Psalms, He knows how weak we are. He remembers that we are just dust. And He does understand. I want you to know God understands. I don't figure out everything God's doing, but He does understand us. He knows what you're going through. He's the one that made you and knows what you're going through right now. To be like God, we can try to help understand other people. Kindness. Be kind. It helps. Let's bow our heads.